Hello and welcome to the Rejuvenate podcast. I'm your host, Chrissy Hawks, and I am here with my co-host, the creator and founder of Genetic Insights and the author of the Rejuvenate Blueprint, Elwin Robinson. And you guys, you are absolutely fantastic. You're so intelligent. You've got all these amazing questions. I know we've done a couple Q&As before, so we're bringing you another one because we really feel that your questions deserve some longer answers than sometimes Elwin can do in the responses on YouTube. So we've decided to bring you some more in-depth answers from our lovely, lovely Elwin, who is the encyclopedia of almost everything.
If I don't know an answer, I'll just say I don't know.
No, it's beautiful, Elwin. Again, as always, I know from reading the comments and reading the questions, there are a lot of people out there that are, really invested in the information that you're bringing, and also to, finding that space of having someone like you that they feel very comfortable and they trust you to give them a really good, honest, thoroughly researched answer. So that's why we're bringing it again to you today. But before we begin and I ask my first question, are there any things that you'd like to say to our listeners?
Yeah, thank you. Again, if you enjoy this channel, do consider subscribing to us through YouTube. Also, to stay in contact with me, we never know with YouTube, what's going to happen. So the ideal thing would be to go to the website, which you'll find links to in the description. I'm saying it that way because we might change it. I think we're doing a rebrand soon, but click on the links in the description and opt in. Give your email address. I do not bombard you with emails. I do not spam you. I barely do one email a week. Often I do less because I don't have time to write the email. But it just means that if anything comes up, it means that if anything happens, God forbid, that makes it more difficult, that, we don't lose touch with each other. I don't know where you're listening to this. I'm focusing on YouTube because I think we get more listeners on YouTube than anywhere else. But remember, we are also on Rumble. Occasionally when we do things that are too risque for YouTube, we do put them on Rumble, like some of my news episodes. We're also on Spotify, we're on Apple, and then every other Amazon Music, whatever, every other podcast platform as far as I'm aware as well. And then lastly, please share, please tell people about this show. Please share a link. Please share it via private message. Please post it in forums. Please post it in Facebook groups. Please post it on X. Please post it on your page. Let people know. Help to grow this channel so that we can carry on doing this, and so that we can get better and better guests, and also better and better sponsorships, so we can try more and more stuff. I do a lot of these experiments anyway, but I've been able that I can then share with you. But the bigger we get, the more experiments I'll be able to do, that I'll be able to afford to do, that I'll be able to have time to do, which I'll then be able to share with you. So help grow the channel, not for my sake, but for your sake, so we can provide you with better stuff. Yeah, Chrissy, I just want to make this point because I keep hearing this, like, Chrissy puts a lot of effort for every episode on the episode description or show notes. She puts timestamps there. She puts links to everything that we've talked about, previous episodes. There's links to Genetic Insights if you want to support us. And then there is links to studies if I've mentioned them. And there is links like giving you access to the person if we've had a guest on. It's all there. I keep getting comments and I keep getting emails from people asking me, where do I find this? Where do I find this? Occasionally she forgets. So by all means, very occasionally. So, leave a comment and we'll check. But I don't know if you've actually ever forgotten, Chrissy. I can't remember. Maybe once. But it's almost always already there. So please utilize that resource. Chrissy puts a lot of effort into it. I think a lot of people, they're not like dismissing it. They just don't even know it's there. That's why I wanted to do this public service announcement. There is loads of resources for every episode from the beginning, since episode 1. There's loads of resources there.
Beautiful. So let's kick it off with the first one here. It's from At the Reminder channel. Absolutely amazing so far. Thanks for this, Elwin. Out of interest, when you regularly have your bloods checked, which test do you use from MediChecks, e.g. Optimal Health blood test or Advanced Wellman blood test, etc.? Thanks again. And I want to also add just a little point there too to this question. And why? Why do you choose the test you choose?
Yeah, okay, good question. So obviously that's a local question. That's a company that's specifically in the UK. So the answer is Ultimate Performance. But yeah, I think if we add in the why, it would have more universal validity, Chrissy. So yeah. Um, so the reason I picked that one is because it gives it's not perfect, but it gives a very broad selection of markers which tell me a lot at a pretty low price, and that is, the crucial thing. Generally, any one of those markers, if you want to test them just on their own of a company, you're probably paying like, I don't know, 40, 50 pounds, something like that usually. But with that one, I'm getting like 50 markers for £200. And, I usually do it as well when they do the 20% off sales. So it's actually 160. So that's really why, yeah. In the US, I think your guys' tests are a bit more expensive than the Ultimate Performance, and certainly the user interface, I would say, is not as friendly. Usually it's just like a printout that's not as good. But basically, most of those markers are available. In my experience working with American clients, you can get something roughly equivalent for about $300. So it's like a little bit more. In Australia, which is the other place I mainly have clients, it's actually often you can get a hell of a lot more for a hell of a lot less. I don't know how they manage to do their tests so cheaply, but it's great. I actually really enjoy working with Australian clients, other than the time zone issues, for many reasons, but that is one of them. So um, I suppose a lot of things are standard, like the CBC, the red blood cells, the white blood cells, the liver enzymes, the kidney function, the blood sugar, well, the A1C at least. Insulin usually costs extra and a lot of money, again, except for in Australia, in my experience. But the reason I picked that one specifically is because it has the hormones in as well. And, you know, although there's 7 parts of the My Rejuvenate blueprint and there's 7 root causes, I'm getting more and more to the point of realizing that to help people with various things and to just make them feel better, hormones really are like such a key. And it's not the only one, like for instance, in recent episodes, we talked a lot about nutrients being such a key and toxins being such a key, and that's true too. But generally, it takes longer for people to feel better when you're working on those levels. And for some things, they're just not effective. So at the moment, my focus is really on the obesity part of the chronic health epidemic. I think that's such a big deal. It does, it is mind-boggling that something has gone from like a 1% prevalence to a 50% prevalence. As much as the autism rates, for instance, it's gone from like 1 in 10,000 to 1 in 30, something like that. So that's a huge increase, but it's still 1 in 30 people. It's still, you could go all day never meeting someone who has it. Whereas with the obesity thing, it's like it's everywhere. Like, literally, depending on where you are, the majority of people have it. It's such a big deal. And I'm really more and more convinced, as I said in a recent episode, and I think there'll be more episodes on it, that a hormonal imbalance is really the key to it. So, especially if you include insulin as a hormone, which I do. So, some hormones it's difficult to test for, but what I like about the Ultimate Performance, to go back to that original question you asked about why, Chrissy, so it has the adrenal hormones, cortisol and DHEA. It has the sex hormones. I wish it actually had progesterone as well. It doesn't, so that's a weakness with it. And that's why sometimes I use a different company that where the user interface is much less good, but they do include progesterone as a standard marker. So that's definitely a weakness in it. But yeah, it has otherwise the sex hormones, LH, FSH, testosterone, free testosterone, estrogen, and prolactin. And prolactin actually is one that pretty common in the UK. For some reason, it's very unusual in the US. It seems to be hard to get, and it's important. And I first heard about its importance from a teacher in the US, so it's surprising that it's just not in there. In the US, it's much easier to get an IGF-1, which is a growth hormone marker. That seems to be much more rare in the UK. It's also fairly easy to get in Australia. So I'm not quite sure why, but anyway, if I were anywhere other than the UK, I'd be looking for a test including IGF-1 for similar reasons. Insulin, I would definitely include that as an add-on. It's so important. I've talked about it before. but I think I might want to do up an episode again, Chrissy, about insulin resistance, actually, because the one we did before was kind of sharing different people's theories on it. I think I want to do an episode now where we talk about my approach to it, and exactly what I would do step by step, as we've done with so many other things. So yeah, let's do that soon. So insulin I'd want to test, and then yeah, and then all the then thyroid, of course, all the thyroid markers, and then some of the pituitary markers. Usually there's TSH, which is also a thyroid marker, FSH, PTH. Ideally, that's thyroid again. But that's not part of the ultimate performance. But again, if I could get, that's hard to get in the UK. But again, if I was in the US or Australia and it was a simple add-on, I would add that on as well, because that's a big deal as an inflammatory marker and stuff like that. And then, yeah, speaking of inflammatory markers, those are good as well. So HSCRP, just because you have it at 0 or negligible doesn't mean you don't have inflammation. But if it is high, it's a definite sign of inflammation. Like there's definitely something going on. So it's useful in that way. And then, MPV is a good, more general marker of inflammation. And we've covered all this in several episodes of Dr. Miriam, so I won't explain them over again. So those are the kind of markers I look for. I've included there both the ones that are in Ultimate Performance, plus I guess the ones that I wish were in there. And so with that, we have a lot of information about the health of your endocrine system overall, which again is not the be all and end all. Like there are other things that are important, but it is a big deal for a lot of different issues. Insulin, thyroids, these are often root cause issues that ruin everything else, make everything else not work. So that's why I think for the price, again, £160 when it's on offer, about $200, at least for the UK, gives you an extremely abundant amount of helpful information.
Excellent. And so with a test like that, how often would you recommend that an individual is getting like the ultimate performance health test? Every few months, twice a year?
It's a great question. So it does depend on how healthy you are. If you really don't have any health challenges and you're coming from it purely from a position of optimization, I would say yearly, or maybe once every 2 years is fine. Why would I still do it even if you're healthy? Because some of those things can creep up on you before you realize it, like insulin, like thyroid underfunctioning, like triglycerides would be another one. These are things that you don't necessarily notice or feel or realize until it's already quite far gone. So I would do it just from that point of view. If you actually have some health issue, even if it's something vague and that you haven't got to the bottom of yet, or certainly if it's something that you are clear what it is, or even if, I don't know, if you're obese, if you're, something else that is not like a medical diagnosis maybe, but that is still an indicator to you that there's a health problem, I would do it as often as you can afford and as often as you can, practically do in terms of arrangements of blood draws and all the rest of it, up to about like once a quarter. So meaning even if you can afford more, I wouldn't bother doing it more frequently than that. But like once a quarter would be ideal. And that, if I'm working with someone on a intensive basis, then it's once a quarter, unless there's something specific. So maybe if we do some kind of intervention and we want to see what's happened, then we'll do it more frequently. We might even do it within less, like a month later, we'll see, okay, what's happened. And, like let's say we've just done stuff for their thyroid, or let's say we just tried to balance their blood sugar, you could make an argument that, you don't have to test everything all over again. You could just test the relevant markers. And that actually is generally how most medical practitioners would do it. They would just pick specific markers that they're interested in. My perspective of that, though, is often when you do that, it's not that much cheaper than getting a very general one like Ultimate Performance. And for that small amount of extra money, I would rather see the knock-on effects on all the other markers. So rather than testing 5 relevant markers for £100, I'd rather have 50 markers for £200 to be able to see, oh, this has had an impact here, this has an impact here. Maybe other things have got better that, we weren't necessarily expecting, but also maybe things have got worse, So maybe someone's gone on to, I don't know, low carb keto diet because they believe that's the thing to do about their insulin resistance. Fine. But, we want to see that that's not, I don't know, elevating their cortisol or, suppressing their thyroid or something. Those are not things that you would naturally check. But, as I said, just money-wise, if it's not that much more, which in practicalities often isn't, certainly in this country, then I would rather have more information.
Great advice, really great advice. This next question is coming from that same episode. This is the one that you did with Jacob the Holy Grail. This is from Justin Guthrie, 108. Is there not a case where you can cut this protocol in half or take the exact ratio of this protocol and ease into it? It seems like a high barrier for entry with risk involved founded by a shadowy figure who talks of growing 2 inches but has no proof. Not saying that this could or could not be a holy grail, but when it comes to such high amounts of supplements where there are not even companies that supply even a fraction of the dose, example 10 milligrams of biotin being the most affordable highest option and which you would need to take 30 pills of, shouldn't there be a less extreme protocol? Why these amounts exactly at this level?
Yeah, so I remember this question because this is quite a recent episode. This confused me on a few different levels. First of all, I think you must have listened to that episode more recently than me, Chrissy. I thought I said in that episode that I started with like a quarter of his dose and then a half. So why is the person asking if we can do that? Yeah, of course you can. I said I did it.
Yeah, I think as well, where I think Jacob may have said like these ratios exactly, blah, 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 blah. But yes, I remember you saying like, yeah, you tested the waters.
Well, yeah, the ratios, that's his system. That's fair enough. He's very specific about that. But yeah, of course you can do less. You could even do a tenth of the dose, I imagine. The only challenge would be just measuring it all out. But if you have one of those microgram scales, which I think are like $20 these days, and you have it in like powder form, these ingredients, yeah, you can do as low as you want. It's totally fine.
Absolutely, because yeah, after listening to that episode, I went and looked around for some biotin, and 100% you can find those powders, and you just grab a scale, weigh it out, and you're good to go. Because I remember him saying as well, that's one of the things, take the powder directly and put it under your tongue and watch if it dissolves straight away. It's something, then that's your body telling you that you absolutely need it.
Absolutely, yeah. And I have to say, I'm a little bit skeptical of those kind of things, but I certainly prefer it to like muscle testing and all these other things that people do, these forms of divination. At least there's like a real physiological mechanism behind that your body's, I think, if your body has a like reaction to a nutrient that it normally doesn't, that seems a lot more credible to me than a lot of these other things regularly done by practitioners as if they're real, which I'm a lot more skeptical of. So it's not a bad way of measuring it. Now, I don't want to seem dismissive of this question because, as I said, like other than the factual points, like yes, you can get 100 milligrams capsules of biotin. So it's not true that 10 is the highest. Like so, there's some factual errors in there. But the spirit of the question of this is risky and this is high. Absolutely right. It is. I think I did a lengthy introduction for that reason. I tried to say, look, a lot of the breakthroughs and advancements and evolution in human civilization and human everything has come from people willing to take those risks, including in modern science. But of course, a lot of those risks go very badly. There's absolutely no guarantee that this is a good idea at all. It really is only for those who are, open and willing to experiment. And if you think it sounds too risky or if you think this person sounds untrustworthy, that's totally fine. Don't do it.
Genetic Insights provides cutting-edge, affordable DNA testing, giving you access to over 500 health reports that can help you in 3 key ways. They may be able to resolve your existing health challenges even when nothing else has worked. Using simple lifestyle changes, their reports can help you reduce your risk of developing future health challenges that you may be genetically predisposed to. And they can help you feel more confident in your health by showing you where you are genetically strong. Unlike most other genetic health testing companies, Genetic Insights tests over 83 million different variations in your genes, guaranteeing 99.7% accuracy across all of their DNA reports. They cover almost every aspect of health, including digestive issues, cardiovascular health, weight loss, hormonal and blood sugar balance, as well as nutrient needs, allergies and intolerances, and so much more. Using their system is quick and easy, and reading the reports is simple. If you've done an Ancestry DNA test, you can simply download your raw DNA data, upload it to the Genetic Insights platform, and within a few hours you will have access to genetic reports which give you a risk score for each specific issue and scientifically validated recommendations based on your individual genetic profile. Everything in your reports are based on scientific studies, and there are citation links throughout every report. If you are serious about optimizing your health and wellness and feeling great, then getting access to your Genetic Insights reports may be the most important health investment you will ever make. In the reports, not only will you gain insights into how to overcome existing health challenges and avoid future issues, you'll also discover which types of dietary, lifestyle, and even supplement protocols are best for your unique genetics. To get your unique genetic health reports, go to geneticinsights.co and use code REJUVENATE to get 20% off today. That's geneticinsights.co using coupon code REJUVENATE to get 20% off today. Here we go, moving on to our next question. Ideally, how soon does a person need to eat breakfast in the morning after waking up?
Great question. 1 hour is the conclusion I've come to. Are there exceptions to that? Yes. But surprisingly, maybe to a lot of people watching, one exception is not because you're trying to lose weight. I don't think that is a reason to not eat within an hour of waking up. And another exception is not because I'm not hungry. I don't think that's a good reason not to eat within an hour of waking up. If you're not hungry within an hour of waking up, it's probably because your metabolism is low and your adrenaline is high. And so that is a reason why you're not hungry, but it's not a reason not to eat. Because if you don't eat, your metabolism will go lower and your adrenaline will go higher. So it is a vicious circle, and it is a vicious circle that you break by eating within an hour of waking up. Now, exactly what you eat and how much, there's more flexibility in. But my conclusion on it is really that. One of the things I think that to me proves that this works is, although obviously I have some issues which I talked about in depth, my insulin and my blood sugar is like always perfect, like in any test results. And when I say perfect, I really mean like extremely good, better than most people by far. And it's because I am on top of this. I think it's really important to eat regular meals. It's really important not to snack, and it's really important to eat early. If you're going to skip a meal, and I'm not against skipping meals in every circumstance, then if you're going to skip, like, say, every meal because you're fasting, then you've got to make sure to rest. Like, do not go to work and do your normal tasks. If you're doing that, you're just running on stress again, and you're not detoxing, because when your toxicity is high, when your adrenaline is high, your ability to detoxify is lowered. People feel better just because they're running on stress. The meal that I would recommend you skip, if you skip any of them, is the last meal of the day. Even that, I find a lot of time when people do it, it doesn't work out, but of all of them, it's the least problematic.
And why would you say that that's the one to skip?
Number one, because I know that some people dispute this, but I can tell you anecdotally, clinically, and I've seen some evidence for it, so if you eat a bunch of calories and then you're doing stuff, even if you're not very physically active, but maybe your brain is doing a lot of stuff, you're going to burn through those calories. If you eat and then, most people go to bed 2 or 3 hours later with the evening meal, it is much more likely to be put on as weight. It's also much more likely to be the fact you're still digesting stuff can interfere with the detoxification process that would naturally happen at night to some degree. So I'm not saying you should skip your evening meal, but I'm saying if there's any meal that there's an argument to skip it, that it might be a good idea, it would be that evening meal. Now, in reality, most people don't skip that meal. Some do. I've known some clients who told me they do, and I say, fair enough, carry on if it works for you. But most people don't, because the way it works for most people are running on stress, they're running on adrenaline, and so they wake up, they're not hungry, which is typical when you're running on adrenaline. Maybe they have coffee, maybe they have a piece of fruit or something, which spikes the blood sugar, but it quickly crashes, causing them to have even more adrenaline. And then they're not like very hungry all day, and then at last they get home maybe, or they settle down, the kids have gone to bed, whatever it might be, and they finally feel like they can relax, and then they start to get hungry, and then they eat loads. And that is the absolute classic recipe for weight gain and health problems in general. So this is where people are like, I'm not having that many calories, I'm dieting, I'm this and that, and I just can't lose weight. A lot of it is because of the way they eat and the times that they eat. They're not eating in the morning, they're snacking throughout the day, and then they're binging at night. It's all a classic way of leading to obesity, but not just obesity, to insulin resistance, therefore heart disease, potentially type 2 diabetes. Like all of these issues, they start with um, going down this path. So to break that cycle, I do think it is good to eat a meal in the morning. It doesn't have to be a big meal, but when I say a meal, I mean not just a piece of fruit or not just a handful of nuts or whatever it may be. Like, and people always like, oh, what should I have? And it's always a quandary to them. And I always just say, what did you have for dinner? Have that. Like, just whatever you make for dinner, make a bit extra. Let's say if you're not very hungry in the morning, make a bit extra, save it, and eat it in the morning. Like, it's that simple. There's nothing complicated to breakfast. It is just, and it's also important to have the right balance of protein, carbs, and fat. That's to some degree different for every person, but you need some of each. So I don't believe, hardly anyone should have a pure carb or pure protein or a pure fat. You need some kind of balance. Um, but yeah, like within a hour of waking up, and trust me, as someone who spent so long not doing this, and it's sad, like I often see people not doing it for the best of reasons, like because they're doing meditation and they're doing exercise and they're doing affirmations, or maybe they're looking after people, they're looking after kids, like all of these positive reasons why people are not eating. It's very rarely because they're watching playing video games or staring at their phone. It's almost always that they're not eating straight away for constructive reasons, but um, it's a self-sabotage without realizing it, because once your blood sugar goes out of balance, it's very, very difficult to get it back in balance again that day. So it's very important to get your blood sugar in balance. Now, the younger you are, the stronger you are, the healthier you are, which there's a genetic component to, the longer you can get away with it. So people, oh, that's not true, Elwin. I feel great. I wake up and I run for 2 hours and I do this and I do that, and then I don't eat till lunchtime and I feel great. You're full of it. That's great, but for most people, there's only so long you can get away with that for. And for some people, it's longer than others, but it eventually causes a problem for the vast majority of people.
Okay, so things to consider there. I mean, I remember when we were talking about it, especially because my cortisol's raised and the issue with some insulin resistance, about how important it is to eat pretty soon after waking up so that I don't continue in that negative loop that is created and is there already. Okay.
The other thing that I'll say, just to simplify this, so irrespective of all the other stuff I said, here's the thing. If your thyroid is working properly and your metabolism is strong, you will be hungry within an hour of waking up. So you would have to suppress the urge of hunger if you were actually healthy. So all the people who are thinking, oh, I'm super healthy and therefore I don't need it, it's like, you're probably super healthy-ish because maybe because you're young, maybe because you're strong genetically, whatever it might be. But it's still a sign of a problem because, we see this again and again. For those who need it, when you get them on T3, once they're on sufficient dose of T3, suddenly that energy comes online. Sorry, sometimes that appetite comes online. Like literally these days, I might wake up and I'll wake up hungry. Like that'll be the first sensation I'm conscious of is, hunger. And that's kind of like, that is a good sign. That's a healthy sign. If you think about small children, again, I guess even small children aren't healthy these days a lot of the time, but if you think about a healthy small child, they wake up hungry. That's pretty normal, right, Chrissy? Did you have that experience with
Oh
your
yeah,
kids?
excuse me. Yes, definitely.
Right. Okay. Yeah. They're not waiting hours and hours before they want to eat something. No, because they're actually healthy. Because they're actually healthy. So that's the thing. If you're actually healthy, especially specifically if your metabolism's actually healthy, you're actually hungry, like very soon after waking up.
Absolutely, very true. So yeah, good points, and I think those are also two ideas to or clues to recognize where you're at with it. Because I know sometimes for me as well, like I'm not hungry in the morning, and so I'm like, oh, I know I need to eat. I need to help myself get out of this. So, brilliant, great points, great question. Our next question comes from Judith Serviz 6609, and she says, "Will MCT oil raise cholesterol?"
Um, I mean, no, but even more importantly, even if it did, that isn't necessarily a bad thing. I mean, raised cholesterol is kind of an issue only to be because it's a sign of a problem, and that problem most commonly is hyperthyroidism. Um, if your thyroid's working well, then your body just converts cholesterol to pregnenolone. Now, another thing that your body converts cholesterol to is vitamin D3. So it's also to some degree a sign of a lack of sunlight, UVB exposure specifically. But it is not a problem in its own right. It's only a problem in the sense that it is indicating that there is some conversion not happening. So, and generally, all the research shows, first of all, they've reduced the reference range. Like, I think like the top end of cholesterol is half of what it was originally. Like they've just cut it way down to justify people taking anti-cholesterol medication. But with the current reference range, the study after study that shows being at the top of that reference range, maybe even slightly over the top, is overall protective for health. It's not even a bad thing. So first of all, don't worry about it, other than maybe investigating if there's some other thing causing it, like hypothyroidism. And then second of all food has a minimal impact on cholesterol. It can have a little bit. I've seen it, like if you take a blood test just after you eat, it's a little bit raised compared to if you take it when you fasted. But it's like less than 5% difference. It's like very little in that short term. Um, and then, all kinds of people like, for instance, Peter Attia, famous medical doctor who focuses on longevity and heart, he said there's pretty much almost no correlation between dietary cholesterol or diet in general and cholesterol levels. And one proof of that is that some of the people who show up with the highest blood cholesterol levels are anorexics, who are literally starving themselves almost to death and certainly are not eating any foods that have cholesterol or high levels of fat.
Why do you think that is?
Because it's a stress response. Like, what's the state of their hormones going to be, right? If you're anorexic, how's your thyroid hormone going to be? It's going to be absolutely collapsed because, as I just talked about in the previous section, regularly eating is part of keeping your thyroid high and your adrenaline low. So, of course, if you're avoiding food to that level, your adrenaline is going to be very high, your thyroid is going to be very low, your conversion from cholesterol to those other things is going to be extremely debilitated. And so, I think, there may be more to it, but that's the most obvious answer to me. That's as simple as that. I don't know if they actually know medically, but to me, that's it. So, because it's really the conversion that's the problem. Your body makes its own. And also, if you're fasting that much that it's a medical problem, it's gonna create all kinds of other issues. My theory would be also when your body breaks down fat, it releases toxins into the system. When the toxins are in the arteries specifically, they can be so caustic that they can potentially burn holes in it and kill you. So your body forms a layer of plaque, including cholesterol, on the walls of those arteries to protect them from the toxicity that's being released from the fat. And so it's also a protective measure. So it's a protective measure. It's a lack of converting it onto the next thing. There may be more to it. But anyway, it just shows that diet really is not a key thing for it.
Okay, good. Good to know. And MCT oil has many, many benefits as well, doesn't it?
Yeah, I love it. I mean, I have it with every meal. I have a tablespoon every meal, which is a lot. I know it can be expensive. I tend to buy it cheap when it's on offer and discounted and all the rest of it. I buy it in bulk when it's available and then make it last. And coconut oil is like 60% MCT oil, so you certainly don't have to buy MCT oil if you can't get it cheap. Coconut oil is just fine. I personally don't like the flavor of the coconut oil, especially with savory food, and I only eat savory food. Um, so I get the deodorized one. As far as I know, there's nothing wrong with that. MCT oil, some people say they don't like it because it kind of burns their throat. And so what I worked out practically, and I saw someone or other who was some kind of teacher talk about how they'd had the same experience. If you add it to a warm liquid, then for some reason it seems to be totally fine. Doesn't burn your throat, doesn't do anything, doesn't cause any digestive upset. And so, yeah, I always add it to soup, stew, something like that. Tablespoon, absolutely no issue, no digestive issue, no nothing. I know a lot of people add it to coffee and stuff, and I think you can certainly add it to a protein drink or any kind of liquid. But again, I'd have it be warm, not cold, for minimize any side effects.
Fantastic. Now, our next question, here we go, says, genuinely an amazing video. You described WTS, Wilson's temperature syndrome, in a very structured manner. Beautiful. Could pale skin on arms and legs be a symptom of Wilson's temperature syndrome, especially for someone who is genetically supposed to be light-skinned?
Pale skin and they're genetically supposed to be light skinned. Right, I guess, yeah. I mean, pale skin for anyone. So yeah, pale skin, more light skin on the hands and feet. They say.
They haven't, no, not specifically. Just, yeah, could pale skin on arms and legs?
Oh, arms and legs. Sorry. Huh. Potentially, because they are extremities. They're not as extreme, which is why I kind of heard in my head hands and feet, because that's more common. So with Wilson's temperature syndrome, what is going on is that lack of conversion of T3 then getting into the cells, and reverse T3 and all that kind of stuff. But another aspect of it that is going on as well is adrenaline. So I have to keep reminding people, adrenaline is a vasoconstrictor. So vasodilator means that the blood vessels, arteries, capillaries, etc., relax and open and more blood flows. And the constrictor is the exact opposite. It's so effective for it that if you've ever been to a dentist and had a tooth extracted, you'll find they'll then inject you with adrenaline immediately afterwards in that area, because it just clamps. It's like a clamp. It immediately shuts down those blood vessels. So it's effective enough it's used as a medication. That's how powerful and immediate the effect is. I guess that's the point I'm trying to make. And so I would say that could be a sign of that. The other thing that it could be a sign of would be like an actual obstruction as opposed to a tightening of blood vessels. But for that to be kind of equally for both arms and both legs would be, it's possible, but that wouldn't be my number one suspicion. And I guess the question would be then, are they always pale? For instance, do they become less pale when you're asleep? For instance, when you first wake up in the morning, are they less pale? Or at night, maybe when you're really relaxed, are they less pale? But yeah, those would be my two suspects. Top suspects would be adrenaline or some kind of arterial blockage. But adrenaline would be my suspicion.
Our next question is from K. Ferguson 614. Isn't the nature of disease often related to an emotion like anger, fear, indecision, hence people don't go to a doctor straight away? Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, it's a good question. The nature of a disease is related to. I am someone who believes that. Yeah, I'm influenced by a lot of people, but one of them is Wilhelm Reich and Alexander Lowen, who had that specific school of thought that connected all disease to those emotions, to various different emotions, or I guess more the repression of various different emotions. And so the idea being that in order to chronically repress feelings, you have to hold certain patterns of muscular contraction, and that when you keep contracting certain muscles, it will stop the blood flow going to various organs, various glands, various tissues, and that over time that builds up and creates disease. So that's my understanding of the actual mechanism, because I don't like it. A lot of people speak about it as if it just magically, repressed anger will cause something, and it's well, how, but that's my understanding about how that would work. So I do think it is a factor, yes. And I think that is why, as we talked about recently in the episode about neuroimmunology and the placebo effect, how you feel, what you believe, like your psychological state does have a big impact on your health. Yeah.
Here we go for our next question. This is coming from the episode that we did on resolving chronic gut infections like SIBO and SIFO. I think it was back in the beginning. And this is from Tom Macy 8007. He said, "This is fantastic. Do you think people could take binders at the same time as antifungals, or would they cancel out?"
Yeah, that's a good question. I would have them apart, but you wouldn't have to have them very far apart, but I would have them like an hour apart ideally. I think depending on the nature of the antifungal, it very well could be absorbed by the binder. Generally, anything that's anti anything, like anti any organism, antibiotic, antiparasitic, antifungal, it's going to be some kind of poison. That's not to say that you shouldn't have it, but that's to say, like, that's its nature. And so there is a strong chance that a binder will bind it and suck it up. So what you would want to do is you take the anti whatever, give it a chance to work. Doesn't necessarily have to be that long, maybe half an hour, something like that, and then immediately follow it with a binder to kind of mop up the residue and the potential, additional poison released by whatever organism you're trying to kill. So yes, I would be concerned about taking them at the same time. It's a good point.
Beautiful. Here we go for our next one. This is saying, "Hey, Elwin, slightly off topic question here. You've delved quite deeply into your research and interviews on both Ray Peat's diet and Grant Genero's low vitamin A diet. These two approaches are almost opposites and even contradict each other. Which one do you lean more towards?"
It's a good question. So they do seem to be opposite in some senses, but I think I might have said this originally with this question. I was interested to see that Grant, Dr. Smith, who I guess is more in Grant's camp, and then Hans Amato, who is much more in the Ray Peat camp, all kind of had similar recommendations for diets for people who are struggling with their health. Now, I think they would have very different takes on what you should eat once you were healthy, but it's interesting they had quite similar. So they were like, find one protein that works for you. I think all three of them agreed that like beef is a good starting place, or bison, I guess. And then find one carb that works for you. And, like, I think Hans might have said like rice, potatoes, and bananas were on his list. I think Dr. Smith is like said bananas, apples, and oats and beans are on his list. Grant said like rice and beans are on his list. So it's like very similar, basically, is what I'm saying, right? So they all agree if you're struggling with your health, then that's a good strategy. And we did an episode on that before where I showed how a diet of just beef and potatoes is probably more nutritionally complete than what the vast majority of people eating a healthy diet are eating, let alone the average person who's not eating a healthy diet. So it's actually so I don't think there's that big a contradiction. Now, of course, when it comes to there is stuff that they absolutely disagree on, right? Including the people I just mentioned. Hans is a big fan of liver, as far as I remember, dairy. If certainly if people can handle it, and those other guys are not. But I think that's where there's like a universal agreement, and that's kind of more. So for me, I like beef potatoes. I do have dairy, as I've admitted several times before. I think that is valid for me, but obviously not for everyone. There are other people it disagrees with. I don't have liver and things like that. The argument to me is thin because it's the vitamin A and the copper are the things that are more contentious. Like some people would say it's good, some people would say it's bad. But liver also does have much higher levels of all kinds of things that everyone agrees are bad, like lead and cadmium and all kinds of like obvious poisons. Because the liver is not a storage organ, but it does accumulate in the liver because while the liver's dealing with those toxins, they just build up in those tissues. It's just the reality of the way it works. Like generally, organs, the kidneys as well, I think the pancreas, like they just accumulate more toxins than like the heart and other kind of muscle tissues, biceps, triceps, whatever. So they just do accumulate more toxicity. So I suppose I lean more in the middle. It's kind of case by case. I I think they all kind of agree that a lot of fibrous vegetables is not great. So that's something that they all have in common again. Um, like one side, the low vitamin A people are generally more keen on starch, whether it's like rice or beans. The rapey people are less keen on starch, except for, they do seem to be fans of potatoes like me, because Ray Pete was a fan of potatoes, I guess. I think he tried to live off them at one point, but or pretty much. So I think they both have valid perspectives, and I think it depends on the person, right? So, as I outlined in many episodes, but let's say the one on the Korean eight constitution medicine specifically, there are different people with different body types who thrive with different diets, and working out what suits you and doing that rather than working out which guru you like or believe in more, I think is far smarter. And so there's a genetic component to that. There's a kind of constitutional component which connects to genetic. And then there's a practical right now component to it. So meaning maybe by your genetics, you do really well with dairy, but specifically because of whatever toxic insults your body has to deal with, it has an allergy to dairy. Okay, well then, for now, until that's resolved, you shouldn't have dairy. There are all kinds of specific things. Maybe you believe that, I don't know, oysters or liver or whatever are good, full of nutritional foods. Oh, let's not do oysters. Let's say, I don't know, mussels and liver are good foods because they're full of nutrition. But if you're already high in copper, maybe you shouldn't have liver. If you're already high in iron, then you shouldn't have mussels. Like it's also contextual, right? As to what your starting place is, what is your situation right now. So again, it's just like personalized, not dogmatic.
Very good point. Yeah, because it's not, no thing is a one size fits all. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, perfect. Moving into our next question. This is saying, how do you stay hydrated if you are insulin resistant and have hypertension from preeclampsia? I feel like an old paper bag in the desert when my insulin is high and have no idea what to drink. Should I drink herbal teas without honey, plain water, electrolytes, mixed, etc.?
Yeah, it's a tough one. I think, you have to resolve the medical condition underneath it. And I don't think that that's impossible to do, right? Depending on how far advanced it is, maybe you're on some kind of medication like metformin. Maybe not. Maybe you're using a herb alternative like berberine, which we have at Feel Younger. Maybe you are, but either case, I think you should be following lifestyle advice, which is again, I think why we should do an updated episode, like a step-by-step guide to insulin resistance rather than more, like a commentary like last time. Just in terms of practicality, I think you've got to investigate what works. I think I drink quite a lot of water, but I really think water is for flushing out toxicity more than it is for hydration, as I said before. So I think most people are not drinking enough water, but not for the reason that they think. And for all the people who say, oh, water isn't really hydrating, blah, 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 they kind of actually do have a point as well. The point of the water to me is that it's to flush out the toxins. Hydration comes from electrolyte balance, some fluid as well. I think you have to be open to experimenting with a lot of different things. If you're feeling really dry, for instance, it may not be any liquid. Like you might want to try something like DGL, for instance, deglycerated licorice. It's basically licorice with. There's a certain part of licorice, like the whole plant, that increases cortisol. So they often remove that. So that's why it's DG L rather than just L. And so that's often used as a it like helps to line. It helps like the stomach lining to if the stomach lining is what's the word, like thin, it helps to protect the stomach lining and I guess to some degree the whole intestines in general. But it is also just like a very, what's the word? Like it's an anti-drying agent. Hydrating isn't quite the word. Moisturizing maybe would be a way of saying it. So that might just help to moisten your mouth. Like you can buy these DGL tablets that like have xylitol and stuff in. So maybe just like sucking on a tablet like that might actually be better for your mouth than anything specific you can drink. I would also be aware of that there are a bunch of things you can drink that are dehydrating and will make you more dry in the category of diuretics. The most common diuretics probably like coffee and tea. These are things that are more drying, but a lot of herbal teas as well will fall in that category, like dandelion, nettle. There's a bunch of them, and then there's a bit of idiosyncrasy. So there's some things that maybe they're supposed to not be that, but they may be that for you. So that's why I said there's a bit of experimentation. Ginseng tea, that's another one that's drying. There's a lot more teas that are drying than not. So for some people, fruit juice would be effective. Even like green juice, a lot of people have green juice, but like celery is diuretic, so celery juice would be pretty drying. A lot of the dark green leaves are pretty drying. Cucumber, a lot of people find moistening. Watermelon, a lot of people find moistening. So even that's like mango, I guess. So even that's like a bit case by case. It's not like fruit juice is necessarily going to be hydrating or not. It depends which fruit. Same with vegetable juice. Same with herbal teas. So yeah, you have to do a bit of experimentation with it. But more than that, you want to really address and resolve the underlying issue. And if you're already trying, fair enough, I understand. But yeah, basically watch our episode for that, because I'm pretty sure, based on my experience, that hardly anyone who thinks they're trying is really following those recommendations. I don't know why people find it so difficult to eat in this way that is completely balanced and moderate. Everyone always wants to have these extremes, whether it's intermittent fasting or keto or whatever. Like people just bounce back and forth between extremes. And if you just eat in a totally moderate way and that is fulfilling, it can also balance blood sugar, which over time will lower cortisol and adrenaline, which over time will also lower insulin resistance, as you get the thyroid function back up. All these kind of things, like it's the non-cheating way of doing it. It's the moderate, it actually works way of doing it, but people seem to prefer to kind of bounce between these extremes a lot of the time. So yeah, watch out for that episode where I show you the moderate solution to insulin resistance.
In an ideal world, you'd meet all of your nutritional needs in the form of vitamins, minerals, phytonutrients, and more from the foods you eat. However, unless you prepare all of your food at home from scratch using the highest quality ingredients possible, the reality is that most of us need some nutritional support. Most of us need to take supplements if we want to look, feel, and perform at our best on a consistent daily basis. And this is especially true if you have genes that give you an elevated need of certain nutrients. And this is where Feel Younger can help. What I love about Feel Younger is that they offer a huge range of quality supplements and healthcare products formulated and endorsed by Elwin Robinson, including must-haves like magnesium glycinate and vitamins B12, D3, and K2. And they do it at affordable prices with free shipping for orders over $50 without ever compromising on quality, purity, or potency. To learn more about how Feel Younger supplements can give your health a boost while supporting this podcast, please visit feelyounger.net and use promo code REJUVENATE to get 20% off your first order. That's promo code REJUVENATE for 20% off your first order at feelyounger.net. Our next question comes from the MOTC peptide episode, where this individual is asking, exercise in a bottle is what they called Cardarine, and that causes cancer. Messing with the mitochondria seems risky, no?
First of all, I would dispute that premise that Cardarine causes cancer. I looked into this in detail, and what it was is there's kind of a certain type of mouse that always gets cancer. And so what they do is they use it for these tests, and they see what type of cancer it gets if they give it different substances. And in this case, it got loads of different types of cancer, and they were like, oh, this is terrible. But there is no evidence that it actually leads to cancer in any organism that is not predisposed to getting cancer anyway. That was just one experiment that actually absolutely, killed the whole thing. And there is a bit of a cynical perspective on that might be because Cardarine was so good at improving blood lipids and all kinds of other things, which would have put a bunch of other medications that I can't remember who it was, but that pharmaceutical company who was developing that, it would have killed a bunch of their other products. So I'm not convinced about that at all. But anyway, back to the MOTS-e thing. Um, should we be skeptical of MOTS-e? Yeah, fair enough. Again, any of these peptides really are in the same category of what I said at the beginning of the episode about, an experimental formulation. They're pretty experimental. They're not well tested. Now, personally, I would prefer to experiment with. I'd rather take MOTS-e than like paracetamol because, in the case of paracetamol, it's been proven already that it's very dangerous and loads of people die of it, and it's it's really bad. MOTS-e, there's no evidence that it's really dangerous, but it could be because there's not a huge amount of studies and there's not a huge sample size of people who used it regularly and all the rest of it. So I would consider it safer than a lot of things that people use habitually, but it's not guaranteed it's true. It's still, and that's why they're called research chemicals usually, unless a doctor's prescribed it for you, because it is research, because we don't really know.
Okay. Yeah. So, and with everything, things can be experimental, but as well, if you're already having a mouse that is the type of mouse that always gets cancer, then it's like trying to look at the parameters of the studies and things around that to make sure that those findings, there might not be a skew somewhere.
And just clarify, that was about Cardarine, not
Right.
MOTS-e, right?
Yeah. Our next question, this comes from the episode about reducing anxiety with just one nutrient. I believe it was glycine, and the lovely Andy who was willing to share his results and his story with us, with everyone.
Yeah, thank you, Andy, because at least 9 out of 10 clients do not want to publicly talk about their results on video, so I appreciate that.
Absolutely. And so this is a question from Clayton saying, cool, any opinions on kratom and kava?
Yeah, I think it's kratom.
Thank you, sorry.
No problem. Kava, God, I don't like kava because it's in that category to me of really, really drying. Probably more than any of the other things I mentioned. So definitely don't go for it if you're the kind of dry kind of person. But yeah, so kava is I believe it's GABAergic, so it's relaxing. It's been shown to raise liver enzymes, so it's mildly liver toxic as well, especially with regular use. Um, for those reasons that I just said, I would not personally use it. I would prefer other things. But it's more powerful than other kind of herbal GABAergics like L-theanine and whatever. And I don't think there's a high tendency for addiction. So it's certainly better than, benzos and Xanax and all that kind of thing. So it's probably like in that intermediate category that could have a place. And certainly if you're using it like maybe ritualistically, as I believe it was, or if you're using it for certain social occasions, I would be, I'd feel totally fine about that, unless you already had like a liver problem. Kratom, I don't know as much about. I've not tried it, but my understanding is that it works in the endorphin system, so it has to some degree opiate-like effects. I believe some stimulants effects as well, and the fact that it has opiate-like effects does mean that it has this tendency for addictiveness, and so if you are someone who's already hooked on opiates, I think it's a definite upgrade, is my understanding. But if you have never had an opiate in your life, like me, I would not want to take it because I would not even want to tiptoe down that road. I know probably people who do a lot of opiates would say kratom is nothing compared to what they're doing, and that's correct. But still, it's a little teeny step in that direction. And if you really go for it and have loads of it, it's a moderate step in that direction. And it's all relative, right? So compared to a lot of things that not a lot of normal people do every day, it's an upgrade. But if you're someone who's really actually doing everything they can to be healthy, I would not risk it. I would not touch it. And and it has some side effects that a lot of those kind of substances do, like being constipating to some degree. I believe, for instance, which is more just an inconvenience. It's a real issue, medium to long term. So yeah, again, could be good if you're doing something worse, but I would not get into it unless you are.
Good points, especially, yeah, trying to figure out what's the right thing to do versus, weighing the benefits versus the cost.
Yeah. And with a carver, it's like, it might be nice if you're going out or something, if other people are handing out stronger drugs, or then that's a much, nicer option. But with a kratom, I would say, yeah, it's probably better to have a small drink or something, honestly, in terms of risk profile.
Our next question comes from our insulin resistance episode from Judah. She said, in US measurements, my fasting blood sugar is 97 and fasting insulin is 5.6. I am insulin resistant, right?
No, you are pre-insulin resistance, I would say. Um, you're not optimal, but you are not fully there yet. I mean, that is the Homer IR score, which that comment is from that episode. So yeah, as I mentioned at the beginning of the episode, check out our episode description, check out our show notes, because there's a lot of useful tools there. And so for this person, one of the tools there is the Homer IR calculator was in that episode description. So you can do that calculation and you can check your score and see if you are technically, off the top of my head without doing it, because I don't have it in front of me. I would say I think you're not quite, but I would say you're suboptimal rather than fully insulin resistant. And I would work on getting you insulin, you know, really definitely below 4. I mean, ideally, 2 or 3. So 5.6, yeah, it's not great, but it's not insulin resistant yet either, I don't believe.
Okay, so yes, it's being like on the way. So it's like you said, not
Pre.
optimal, but yeah, pre. And so that there are things that you can do to bring that down.
Yeah, and they're all exactly the same things that you would do if you already were insulin resistance. There's no really any difference. So it'd just be, prevention is always easier than cure. So if you follow those recommendations in that video and probably in an upcoming video, who knows what order we'll release them in. Maybe we'll already have released that episode by the time this comes out. But yeah, like follow those recommendations and it will get better.
And now to our last question of the episode from Sullivan Kelly says, hi, Elwin, great video. I'm 40 and following a pro-metabolic diet. Says 208 and then hashtag eat 3,800 to 4,000 plus calories a day while slowly gaining muscles. If I wanted to introduce short fast to slowly start shedding fat without sacrificing muscle, any tools you recommend? Methylene blue, for example?
Okay, great question. So first of all, shout out to Sullivan. We never mentioned this, but if you would like to support the channel, you can do by subscribing in YouTube. We don't have a Patreon or anything like that, but Sullivan is one of our first, I think, people who signed up. We have a handful of them now. We should probably do a shout at them at some point, Chrissy, to thank them for their continuing support. If you'd like to support the channel, I think it's very low. I can't remember what it's like, $1 a month or something like that. Like is the starting tier or the only tier or whatever. Like Sullivan does or did at by the time this comes out. I really appreciate it. You can do that on YouTube by clicking the subscribe button. So anyway, yeah, pro-metabolic diet. It sounds like he has a similar calorie intake that I do. I would not fast for that reason, but I think that reason is a better reason to fast than most, honestly. So I'm more supportive of him doing it than all these other reasons why people do it that we talked about earlier. Um, I would be looking on though at hormonal stuff, Sullivan. So I would consider growth hormone. Probably not actually taking growth hormone, but growth hormone peptides. I would consider. Obviously, fasting is a way of boosting growth hormone. I understand that naturally. Making sure you get enough sleep is also a good way of boosting growth hormone. Sauna, like very hot saunas, are a way of boosting growth hormone. Potentially taking high doses of the amino acid L-arginine are a way of boosting growth hormone. So that's one way of optimizing fat to muscle ratio. Ditto with everything that supports testosterone, if it's not already high. And not just testosterone, but also free testosterone. And in fact, even DHT. DHT is not like for getting big muscles. That's more testosterone, that's anabolic. But DHT is more for having like harder, drier muscles. I know bodybuilders talk about that. And so like for a cut phase, I would look at reducing estrogen. I would look at reducing insulin. And the reducing insulin portion specifically is, or fasting insulin at least, and the reducing fasting insulin portion specifically is why I would not probably recommend a lot of fasting, because it does work short term to help to cut if you're then also having a high protein, high calorie diet like you said that you are. But that blood sugar dysregulation long term, I find, will actually raise that fasting insulin, which will then make it more difficult to lose weight. So it's kind of like short term gain for long term potential problems. So I would probably actually go more towards for cutting and trying to build muscle at the same time, I would actually go more towards the lower carb, higher protein and fat approach. I wouldn't go too far with that, obviously, for the reasons we talked about. Again, that as you know, Sullivan, because I know you're very knowledgeable, that will overly increase cortisol and all the rest of it. But I would go a little bit in that direction for cutting, and then go back to having more carbs for bulking. And I think that's pretty common with the bodybuilding community.
Absolutely wonderful, everyone. Thank you again for your time, for joining us. As always, it's been a pleasure. Please remember to hit the like and subscribe button and the bell icon so you don't miss an episode. And we'll see you next time.
Hey, thanks for watching the video. If you enjoyed that, I recommend watching our latest episode, which you can do by clicking above. And make sure to subscribe, like the video, comment, and share with anyone who you think might appreciate it. Thank you.